Back for the second time today because it is the men's final at Roland Garros tomorrow, and it was only set earlier today, so couldn't do this stream previously, and was here earlier previewing the women's final, which is now done and dusted. If you watched the video earlier today, you will know that I unofficially predicted Ashley Barty to come through. She did that comprehensively, mightily impressive, but now we turn our attention to the men's clash between Rafael Nadal, top seed, defending champion, 11-time champion, so it's a status he's used to holding, and Dominic Thiem, Prince of Clay, who came through over Novak Djokovic. Hey guys, welcome back to the tennis vlog. This camera angle's annoying me, but we'll make it do. Thank you for tuning in, late as ever, just keeping up the trend of the tournaments. And yeah, thank you for tuning in. We're going to dissect this match. Hopefully it won't take forever. I know where I'm going with this one, so no dilly-dallying around when it comes to the prediction, of which I will officially make one this time around. I should always go with my gut. I mean, who cares if I haven't watched every player? My gut is generally along the right lines. So it is a rematch of last year's final. Total respect to both Nadal and Thiem. I mean, Thiem is obviously a top player, but he's not one of the big three. To get to a major final at the same event 2 years running, not something that many players outside of the big three accomplish. In fact, I can't remember the last time a non-member of the big three actually defended their run to the final at the major the next year. So full credit to this guy who's really backing up that Prince of Clay nickname, doing it marvelously well. But now let's take a look at the runs to date. Both Nadal, who played the day before yesterday, and Thiem, who played earlier today under controversial circumstances, but it happened and he came through. Let's start with Nadal, and it won't take us very long. So if you were following tennis ahead of this tournament, you'll know that Nadal wasn't as dominant as he has been prior to the French Open, but he got things on track in Rome, the Rome Masters, where he secured a double whammy, really. He beat Novak Djokovic, who's one of his biggest rivals, if not his biggest rival, and he got a title on dirt for the first time this year. So he peaks at the right time to be prepped for this tournament, and honestly, he's never looked in trouble. And has beaten some decent names along the way, I have to say. Up until that win over Djokovic, Thiem's list of victims looks substantially less impressive than Nadal's, and Thiem's also dropped more sets. But let's get going. Two Yannicks in the first two rounds, Yannick Hanfmann and Yannick Maiden. Nadal didn't really struggle with either of them. It was the perfect prep for him. Some players, like Djokovic, for example, value challenges early on. What Nadal needs for his mental strength is a couple of decent early matchups, to be honest, just to get his forehand going, get his whole game going, and just to make him feel more secure, to be honest, especially here where there's so much pressure on him. 6-2, 6-1, 6-3, and 6-1, 6-2, 6-4 in those opening two matches. Then had 15 minutes of trouble against David Goffin. He was pretty dominant early on against the former top 10 player, and then Goffin played some of his best tennis in some time at the back end of that third set to take it to 4 sets. Nadal didn't have trouble in the end. 6-1, 6-3, 4-6, 6-3 over the number 27 seed. Goffin is a player who's extremely dangerous when he's in the zone. We saw him take Federer out of the ATP finals year before last now, and had that kind of vibe about him when he took that third set off Nadal. For all his efficiency, Nadal can be a bit complacent sometimes when he's nearing the end of a win. I've seen him many times drop serve, for example, when he's serving for a match, and he generally breaks straight back, but there is that little bit of almost easing off the gas a bit, and Goffin had not got to juice on a Nadal service game before the back end of that third set, but he took advantage, and I think just that little bit of a shake-up was probably beneficial to Nadal going forward because it just made him a little bit more alert. Juan Landero has been in good form, the Argentine, but Nadal having no trouble, 6-2, 6-3, 6-3 in the fourth round. Did I say Nadal was the top seed earlier? I'm not with it today. I can't remember if I did, but he's the number 2 seed. Djokovic was the top seed. Quarterfinals, Kei Nishikori, 6-1, 6-1, 6-3. It was a thumping. Nishikori did well to get to the quarters, to be honest. He's not been in the greatest form this clay court season, despite being one of the best on this surface, probably on the tour. And he was just tired. He'd come through 2 straight 5-setters to get to that match, and it was just another boost of confidence for Nadal, who was completely controlling play, ripping the forehand, and just pushing Nishikori around, essentially. Then was the big one, the semi-finals against Roger Federer, who was also in vintage form, and given that Federer was playing without pressure and relaxed and all that, a lot of people were giving Federer real chances, including myself. Now, I always said that Nadal would eventually win the match, but I thought that this was Federer's best shot at Nadal at the French Open. He's come back to clay for the first time in 3 years. He's been so dialed in, but swinging so freely because he has nothing to prove to anyone on this surface. He's won a French Open title, which is probably as many as he was expecting in the same era as Nadal. And he was just coming out here to see what he could achieve and to see how far he could go, and was not putting any pressure on himself at all. Unfortunately for Federer, the conditions were never going to help his cause. That was a disastrously blustery day yesterday, especially felt on court Philippe Chatrier. Federer struggled with the conditions. Very, like, the windiest I've ever seen it at the French Open, and that's more beneficial to Nadal with his high bouncing shots. He just found it a bit easier to deal with. Federer hits a very slick ball and would thrive more in heavier conditions, which it certainly wasn't. So, I mean, you could tell he was frustrated, but he just got on with it, unlike someone else who had a bit more of a rant about it, but there you go. I'm not talking about Nadal, I'm talking about another match, but 6-3, 6-4, 6-2, Federer went down, and I have to say, I didn't watch this match in real time because I was out all morning, busy yesterday. I think that's why I'm still tired, just kind of recovering long journeys. But from what I saw after that first set, which both players found particularly difficult in terms of getting used to the conditions, the shot making quality from the two of them, the rallies they were engaging in, absorbing each other's pace, using the far reaches of the court, coming forward into the court, brilliant. And that's what happens when two world-class players have played each other so many times. They can anticipate what's coming and just put on a show, really. And it came down to Nadal being vintage in the big moments. Also, he was aware of Federer's strategy of coming to the net a lot. Nadal was expecting that because the best chance for Federer in this match was to come forward and keep the points incredibly short. Which he attempted to do, but Nadal was ready for it, and he didn't flinch, he didn't get nervous, he nailed passing shots, he pinpointed Federer, and came away with a straight sets victory over one of his biggest rivals, who'd been in great form, and who he knows is a great clay court player, even if the achievements of Nadal himself minimise those of Federer's. So, brilliant run for Nadal, and I say that once, I'll say it again, to write him off over a few losses during the dirt season. I mean, come on. It's Rafael Nadal. He's an 11-time champ here. Best of 5 sets. Why bet against him? Why bet against him? When will people learn? Anyway, Dominic Thiem, the number 4 seed. Massive respect to this guy. He loves the sport so much and he's so focused that people were freaking out after all 3 of his opening matches went to 4 sets. But what's very obvious about Thiem is that he thrives on a challenge. He enjoys it. He loves this game. And he really rose after those matches, and then really tough one with Djokovic. But let's take it from square one. In the first round on court, Suzanne Lenglen took on Tommy Paul, the American, who's got some real firepower on him. I mean, more suited to a faster surface, but was mixing it up, had Thiem in some difficulty. Thiem lost the second set, was inches away from losing the third in the tiebreak. He was 4-2 down, 4-love down, actually, in that tiebreak, and really had to swing to come through. And that's a massive thing about Federer, what the heck, Thiem this clay court season. Federer as well, to be fair, swinging in the big moments. I mean, when he got that win over Federer prior to the event, Federer had match points, it was on his racket. Thiem just took it out of his hands, swung, and we saw a bit of that against Paul. 6-4, 4-6, 7-6, 6-2. Alexander Bublik in the second round took him to 4 sets again, but the set that he got was a tiebreak, so it wasn't as close. 6-3, 6-7, 6-3, 7-5. Obvious potential to finish that one in straights, despite the fact that Bublik was really asking him questions and moving him around. So 4 sets, but 2 decent wins there, and another one against Pablo Cuevas, who a few years ago would have been seeded at these events. He's struggled a bit more in recent times, the Argentine, but Thiem coming through 6-3, 4-6, 6-2, 7-5 against Cuevas in his decent sliced backhand net game. He has a lot to trouble, and good stuff from Thiem. 4th round, Gael Monfils. Didn't expect this one to be close, to be honest. I mean, Monfils, so athletic, so talented, but sometimes he can go down pretty easily, and I'm sorry, but he's a Frenchman at Roland Garros, and they did incredibly well at the beginning of the tournament. The vast majority of them going through, and there were about, I think, 17 of them in the draw. Brilliant stuff, but it gets to a point where there's just so much pressure and so much talent that's up against them. Tough draw for Monfils, but he went down in a pretty one-sided match. I felt 6-4, 6-4, 6-2. Karen Khachanov posed a challenge. He'd taken out Juan Martín del Potro in an epic. Really used that topspin forehand and came forwards, was attacking throughout and had a really good attacking mindset. No trouble for Thiem, 6-2, 6-4, 6-2, and then we come to the dramatic match against the top seed, Novak Djokovic, who was the favourite of a lot of people for the title. I mean, I saw a poll at one point, and you can't really take everything from these polls, but almost 50% thought that Djokovic would win the whole thing. With just a fraction more saying Nadal. I mean, I wasn't picking Djokovic. I thought he had a good chance of making the final and then losing to Nadal, but if anyone else was gonna take him down, it was gonna be Thiem. He's beaten him here before, straight sets 2 years ago. Yeah, Djokovic wasn't in great form at that point in time, but he'd made the quarters, and Thiem, you know, one of the best, right up there on this surface. There's a reason that it's him that's called the Prince of Clay and not Djokovic. Djokovic has been brilliant across all surfaces for many years, but Thiem, in a way, he lives for this surface. You know, he thrives on this one above all others, which is why it's crazy that his Masters 1000 title in Indian Wells didn't come on clay. But yeah, Djokovic, there was so much on the line for him with him being so close to winning all 4 slams in a row for the second time. That's monumental in this era with Nadal, with Federer, with other talents like Thiem, to be on the verge of doing something that big. And no, it wasn't talked about much, and I think that's because both times he's been on the cusp of doing this, it's been at the French Open, and who's the massive favourite every single year for the French Open? It's Nadal. So it's a bit different to if Djokovic had won 3 in a row and was going into the US Open, then it's going to be massive news. So I do understand why it wasn't talked about that much, but I think it had an impact on this match against Thiem because Djokovic was so tight at times. I can't remember the last time I saw him that tight continuously in a match. And so I do understand his agitation at times. But it was easy to get wound up by him during that match. I mean, it started on the yesterday. So all semi-finals were being played yesterday, women's and men's. Djokovic and Thiem were second on. The wind was about the same, if not as bad as the Federer and Nadal match, but at one point Djokovic was moaning for the match to be suspended because of bad weather, because of the wind. So Djokovic's shots are more lightweight than Thiem's, so wind is going to be a bit more of an issue for him. Thiem was playing a very attacking game, striking through the winds. Djokovic is one of the most balanced players on tour. That's why he's so reliable from the baseline and so athletic, but he was just being his body was being pulled all over the place. The ball spinning strange and landing weirdly because of the conditions. He was just really struggling. So Djokovic lost the first set 6-2, and was, I'm not sure if he was down in the second set, but at one point it started raining a bit, and the moment it started raining, Djokovic asked no questions of anyone, who just grabbed his bag, ran inside. And it wasn't the first time he did that. It happened again when Thiem had just broken, actually, for 3-1 in the third set. Djokovic, same thing, bolted the moment he felt a drop of rain, just left the court. And fair enough, you know, if you have the liberty to do that, you're going to do it. But there was just a lot thrown at Thiem to cope with in this match. He had to cope with the conditions himself. I mean, yeah, he wasn't struggling as much as Djokovic, but they both had to cope with the same thing. So there was that. There were the continual disruptions. I mean, Djokovic seemed set on getting this match cancelled at the end of the day. And then they had to wait overnight, and they came back out today, and the conditions were different. Djokovic wasn't struggling so much. So there was just a lot thrown at him to cope with, and I think at the end of the day, it's a big mental victory for Thiem. When they came back out today, predictably, Djokovic did get back on serve, but Thiem still broke to take the third set 7-5. Now, that last game was a bit weird from Djokovic, and it is a case in this match of Djokovic looking tight at times. Particularly, I would say, at the back end of the fifth set. Obviously, Djokovic took it to a decider because he's Djokovic and he's a fighter, and he's tough to take down, especially in the form he's been in so far this year, especially given he'd won the last 3 Grand Slams. And at the back end of that set, Thiem had too much points on serve at 5-3, hooked a backhand slice wide, made an unforced error, and before you knew it, Djokovic was back on serve. Unforgivable, really. Thiem just took his foot off the gas. And that's in complete contrast to the way he's played big points throughout the clay court season. He's been focused, attacking, trusting himself, trusting his play. I didn't see that at times in the decider, which makes me question him a bit against Nadal, because it's crazy to say this about Djokovic, because Djokovic usually leaps on his chances, but Djokovic helped him out in this match. Djokovic looked tight, and then he'd look to have it back in his possession, the match and the way it was going. And then he'd get tight again, because there was so much on the line for him. And he was up against a guy who, when he's on song, his top gear was just difficult for Djokovic to live with. That's the way it is. Djokovic really struggles on clay against an aggressive player who does not let up. And that's what Thiem did when it mattered. Nailed a brilliant forehand winner to secure the victory, and there it was, 6-2, 3-6, 7-5, 5-7, 7-5 for Thiem, and a rematch of the final last year. And again, I say there has not been enough credit given to the men for their consistency. Back in the day, if you like, a few years ago, it was normal for all the top seeds to make it to the semis of a Grand Slam. And I was talking to my older brother, actually, the other day, who's not a big tennis watcher. He used to be. He got annoyed with it when I got so into it that I said to him, "Oh, you're watching the French Open?" He said, "It's kind of boring, isn't it?" He said, all 4 top seeds have made the semis. I said, "No, that doesn't happen at the moment, because there are always upsets, such as the depth of the draw, such as, and especially on the women's side, you know, it's inconsistency, rising talents." I think it's just shows a tremendous amount of mental strength for those 4 guys to make the semis, and then for Thiem, who's not one of the big 3, to get to the final. I can't give enough praise, you know, to come through Djokovic on his way there. Brilliant stuff. And, you know, it's yeah, good on them. But we got to preview and predict this final. So last year it was pretty straightforward for Nadal. It was a straight sets win. I kind of anticipated that, because when Nadal gets to a French Open final and he wins the first set, that really relaxes him and he kind of goes on a roll. So I wasn't surprised. And I'm just looking down. I pulled up, the reason I was a bit late to this stream was because I was getting up these extra stats that I thought might be of interest. I pulled up Nadal's previous French Open runs because I was curious as to how many finals that aren't against Djokovic he's played at the French Open that have actually extended straight sets. So I'm looking at here we go. Right. So let's go back. Let's go through the finals he's played against opponents not named Novak Djokovic that have gone beyond 3 sets. Okay. Last year against Thiem, 6-4, 6-3, 6-2. 2017 against Wawrinka, 6-2, 6-3, 6-1. And these are quality clay court players. Okay. Pulled out of 2016, lost to Djokovic in 2015. Djokovic in the final, 2014. All right, David Ferrer, 2013, final, 6-3, 6-2, 6-3. Straight sets again. Final before that, beat Djokovic in 4. Final against Federer in 2011, he won in 4. But then again, you know, it's a member of the big 3 there. Okay, final against Robin Soderling, 2010, 6-4, 6-2, 6-4. And Soderling, no pushover. He's the only other player to beat Nadal at this event, which was the year before. 2008 final over Roger Federer, 6-1, 6-3, 6-love. So you get the idea, okay? I'm just going down. Final in 2007, 6-3, 4-6, 6-3, 6-4. So 4 sets. 4 sets over Federer again in 2006. 2005, his first win was against Mariano Puerta, and that was in 4 sets. But apart from that first win, any final he's played that's not against Djokovic or Federer has been won in straight sets. So in a way, it's difficult for me not to see Nadal kind of rolling with this one. But on the other side of the coin, you know, Thiem so recently lost here in straights to Nadal. It was his first Grand Slam final. It was his first time up against Nadal in that final, and he's beaten him on clay already this year. It's also hard for me to see Thiem letting Nadal win that easily again. Okay, so there's a lot to take into consideration here. Nadal's never lost at the French Open outside of the quarterfinals. He's never lost beforehand. He's never lost afterwards. So you're looking at a monumental record here. I know I've used that word a lot before, but I mean, what Nadal has done here is ridiculous. And because we talk about it so much and because we're fully aware of it, we don't fully pay tribute to that fact. But his dominance here, the way he can control things, the way he can come back when he's down, the way he can dominate, out of this world, really. And Thiem's got a massive task on his hand. This isn't as straightforward as a match earlier in the tournament at Masters 1000. This is a best of 5 sets match on court Philippe Chatrier in the French Open final, which is a place that Nadal has owned over the years. He's played 11 finals, never lost one. Just looking at that head-to-head, it's not as dismal for Thiem as it could be. Nadal leads 8 wins to 4, and Thiem got their most recent meeting in the semi-finals in Barcelona earlier this year, 6-4, 6-4. Nadal was on his way back at that point. As I've mentioned earlier in the video, Nadal took his time getting into things during this clay court season. When he came in initially, he'd been injured a bit. He'd taken some time out. He was a bit rusty. Therefore, he started losing. That knocked his confidence. Then in this match with Thiem, he was starting to piece the puzzle pieces back together, as it were, and he just wasn't quite there. He was producing some good tennis, but not in the big moments when it mattered. But that match against Thiem was one where he said, I'm on my way back, I'm almost there. And straight sets for Thiem, encouraging, but still, you know, Nadal kept it close. It was just the back end where Thiem was on top. What else to say? I mean, in a way, you kind of know it all about these two players. Nadal, the off forehand, the first serve has been essential for him this clay court season, setting up and playing a more attacking game. We know that Nadal can work the points into his favour from any area, from any position on the surface, but he has been looking to be more attacking from the offset, and it's, I think, conserved his energy a bit. It's made him a more confident and assertive player. And he's using quite a bit of variety as well, just keeping his opponents guessing. Thiem has to keep the points shorter. He cannot afford to be engaging in long rallies really at the back of the court, however well he opened the court up at times against Djokovic. There were times where he did look lethal. And there have been times throughout this clay court season where Thiem has been unstoppable. He's now beaten Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic this clay court season, and came close to beating Djokovic before the tournament. It was 2 tie breaks when they faced off. And just the sheer firepower he can get on a surface that is supposed to be slow is pretty scary at times. He can make his balls skid off the baseline, nail the corners, and he'll be looking to try and finish the points quick, I think, or, work the points so that Nadal's well off the sides of the court so that he can strike the winner down the line. The options are slim for teams such as Nadal's ability to work the point, especially on the surface. And yeah, I mean, looking at the head-to-head as a whole, Nadal had won the 2 meetings before Barcelona, including the French Open final. They've played twice, 3 times at the French Open in total. Nadal won the first meeting of their rivalry in 2014, so that's a while back. Team was very much still on the rise at that point. 6-2, 6-2, 6-3 in the 4th round. 2017 they met in the semis, and Nadal won 6-3, 6-4, 6-love, and they meet again today, and then 2018 final 6-4, 6-3, 6-2. So 9 sets they've played against each other here, and Nadal has won all of them. What can I say? Because the Federer Nadal match was expected to be a battle. It was expected to go to 4 or 5 sets, and it didn't. And I honestly think that the conditions had a lot to do with that. The standard that Federer was producing at times, and he came so close to that second set anyway. I do think that if the conditions had been more neutral, Federer could have taken a set there. He could have made things a bit more interesting. And honestly, I'm not giving Team 0 chances. This is a guy who beat Federer in the Indian Wells final this year, who's, like I just said, beaten all of the top 3 on clay this year. If anyone has the capacity and the desire and the energy to beat Nadal this year, it's Thiem, because I don't think having played today is going to harm him. He's packed his schedule full for years. He loves to play, and I don't think that lack of energy is going to be a real issue for him. I think he's just going to roll with it, and in that respect, I think he's going to be okay. So I think he's got as decent an opportunity as he could come in hoping for. But, I didn't look past Nadal before the tournament. I haven't looked past Nadal at this tournament in years, and I'm not going to do so again. So I think the team will be more relaxed, having done this before, having been here last year. I don't think he's going to feel more pressure because of how relatively easily he was pushed aside last year. But I think Nadal should definitely have this, and it's just a case of how many sets. And usually I kind of go to I'm a bit of a wuss, really, and I say in 4 sets if I'm really unsure of something, or if I want to say straight sets and I think that the opponent has a chance, and I don't want to. Yeah, I just chicken out a bit sometimes, but I'm tempted to say Nadal in straights, just because if he gets the first set, I feel like he'll be running away with it. That first set is of real importance. I think if Thiem can get the first or second set, there is the potential for the match to go to 4 sets, 5 sets, and Thiem will have very real chances. But if Nadal gets a hold earlier in the match, it's going to be incredibly difficult. So I am going to say Rafael Nadal to win a ridiculous 12th French Open trophy. No man or woman has ever won more events at a single slam. And more titles even. Sets, if I'm going with Nadal, I might as well really go with Nadal. And I'm tempted to give Thiem a set or 2, but okay, it's the wusser's move, okay? But I'm going to say Nadal in 4 sets, just because Thiem's competed so well that I don't want to completely push him out of the picture. But there is a part of me that thinks Nadal will win in straights. But for the purpose of this video, Rafael Nadal in 4 sets, and, Dominic Thiem, if he can get in there early and dig into the match, will have his opportunities, and there's the potential for it to be a quality battle. I almost hope it is, to round off what I think has been a terrific men's event. But yeah, I am pretty sure that Nadal will be raising a 12th French Open trophy. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you for watching all of the French Open live streams. I've done a few. After I'm done here, I'm going to touch up the thumbnails a bit because I've just done a generic one for each one, and the channel looks a bit yeah, a bit amateur at the moment, so I'm gonna deal with them a bit. I'm just scrolling through some of your questions because we've got a little bit of time, and I might answer if there are any difficult. Who do I think will win? I've answered because it's a preview and predictions video. How does Nishikori stay motivated? His body always lets him down. I think if you love this sport enough, then there's always motivation, you know? And if you have the desire to achieve, I mean, Nadal, here he is, as fierce a contender as ever for the French Open, a leading contender, and he's had so many knockbacks, so many injuries to key parts of his body, his knee, most particularly. And, you know, Nishikori's beaten all the biggest names in the sport. And if that's not motivation enough to come back and try and do it again, then, you know, yeah, he'll retire. But I think that he's committed enough to keep going. Do you think Djokovic will go back into another slump? He hasn't won a tournament since the Australian Open. Good stat. I hadn't really picked. Oh no, it's not, because he has won a tournament since the Australian Open. He won Madrid, yeah, before Rome, because that was interesting to me, because Nadal and Djokovic came into the event on the same number of titles in the clay court season. So yeah, he has won a tournament since the Australian Open, but he did have stumbles in Indian Wells and Miami. I don't see him going back into another 2-year slump like after the French Open. I never write off Djokovic. I still think that him and Federer are the leading contenders going into Wimbledon, and of the two players, I think Djokovic has the stronger mentality, so he might have the edge there. When it comes to talking about a slump, you know, he even under immense pressure, he did incredibly well here, so I'm not writing him off, and only time will tell in that respect. Do you even read what pops up on your screen? Yes, I do, but I'm more focused on when it's a preview and predictions video, just saying stuff and getting my prediction out there so the people that want to leave and get on with their lives can do. So yeah, we've got some predictions. Nadal in 4, Nadal in 3, Nadal in 3. Oh, guys, I should have gone for Nadal in 3, shouldn't I? I mean, there's a lot of people agreeing here. I mean, let's say, okay, on the inside, I think Nadal will win in straights, but my Nadal in 4 sets is respect to Thiem for the quality and the fight he's produced this tournament. But, you know, his tightness against Djokovic gives me real doubts. So, yeah, Nadal in 3, really, but also Nadal in 4. Just Nadal, you know, Nadal to win. Thiem in 2, lol. Some of this is amusing. Okay. Yeah, don't worry. I'm full of incorrect stats. I'm full of typos today as well. I'm pretty tired. I can't count the amount of tweets I've had to delete and retype. Yeah, I've not had my best day today, but there's always tomorrow. So yeah, thank you for watching the stream. I've rambled a bit, so I don't know who will have watched this far, but if you have, I can tell you that I'm not sure when I'll be back with new videos. The grass court season officially is already underway, but really gets underway starting tomorrow, when the day after tomorrow, when the French Open's wrapped up. And I travel a bit during the grass court season. I go to events, I interview players, I watch the tennis. It's all fun and games, and yeah, I love the grass court season. And content changes and varies a bit during that time. I write more at my website, the Tennis Journal, because I do interviews and I do interview features. So make sure that you're checking out the website there if you haven't already. And I'm not sure what kind of content I will be uploading during the grass court season. So if you have any suggestions, then leave a comment to this video and let me know what you might like to see. Can't guarantee anything because I have other things that I need to do, but for sure, let me know. I value your viewership and the comments you send, and everyone who subscribes. Thank you for subscribing, and if you haven't subscribed, then please do. I'm interested to see what goes down in this final, and whatever happens, it's been a wild tournament on both the men's and the women's side. No shortage of stories, and honestly, up until the end of the tournament, they'd done pretty well weather-wise as well. So full credit to the French Open, and it's time to move on to the grass after this match. So enjoy the final, and